I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to congratulate you, Mr. Lightfoot, on once again today setting a new record as the longest serving acting director of NASA. I hope you'll have an extension of that record tomorrow. We'll see if the Senate ever acts on who's supposed to be nominated by the President. Now, how much steel and aluminum does NASA use? Do you have any judgment about that?
I have no idea, sir.
I mean, you use steel in the launch platforms, and of course, aluminum, that's one of the metals used in alloys or directly in providing lightweight launch vehicles, commercial crew vehicle, all those things, correct?
It's usually different materials than that. I mean, we use a lot of aluminum, I'm sure. I can't tell you how much, though.
Has this administration's proposed NASA budget taken into account the higher costs for steel and aluminum that would be anticipated because of the proposed 10% aluminum and 25% steel tariffs?
No.
All right, I hope...
It was developed before that, so...
Okay, I hope you'll take that into account, and hopefully it will be minimal, but if it's not and it's something we need to adjust for, then we do need that information. In March of last year, the committee held a hearing on the future of the International Space Station. More recently, the President's budget proposes additional funding to stimulate low Earth orbit commercialization. Would you please discuss NASA's current thinking on commercialization and transition strategies for the International Space Station?
Yes, sir. We think that the commercial industry is really on the precipice of really being able to take over that area. We need another destination, perhaps other than ISS, or use the International Space Station as a destination, maybe operated by others. Our planning and our thoughts here are that if we're going to do this, we need to talk about it now and not later on. If we're going to, because of the way the budget works, so what we want to do this year is we want to do a series of calls to see what people are doing, ask for their business plan, their business proposal, what are they going to do, whether it's use the ISS, have a standalone activity in low Earth orbit, but ultimately develop a destination in low Earth orbit that our commercial partners can go to, that we and our international partners can use going forward.
If NASA is unable to reduce its costs for operating the International Space Station by 2025, and if the low Earth orbit commercialization activity does not bear fruit, what should the United States do regarding its presence on the International Space Station at that point?
Yeah, I think the real question is what is the research we can get, the research and science value in low Earth orbit that we will get from an International Space Station or another entity. And I think that's a discussion we'll have once we get the data back that tells us what we need to go do, and we'll bring back a budget that addresses it. We'll have to make that decision based on the technologies and the research that we need to do, whether we can accomplish it in low Earth orbit or in our future move out toward the moon.
Each commercial crew provider is required to fly an uncrewed flight, followed by a crewed test flight before beginning International Space Station crew missions. Originally, commercial crew providers were required to fly functioning environmental control and life support systems on their uncrewed flights. These systems provide oxygen to astronauts, absorb carbon dioxide, provide heating and cooling for the crew, and maintain atmospheric pressure. Recently, SpaceX was granted a waiver by NASA to fly their first test flight without these systems. What is NASA's reasoning for skipping this stage? And that's assuming the information I have is correct. First, is the information I have correct?
I'm not 100% sure, but what I will tell you is no matter what we do when we fly crew, we will have the safety policy in place that we need, and we'll have the risk management appropriately around those activities. So I'll take that for the record to get back with you in terms of exactly what we've agreed to there on that, from that standpoint. But no matter what the first crewed flight is for us, it will have the right safety checks that we would normally do and require before we fly crews on those missions.
Well, thank you. I look forward to getting that information back, and also if the proposed tariffs on aluminum and steel do affect the NASA's budget, if you could get that back to us too, so that we can ensure that NASA is properly funded.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Colorado, Mr.